to Sideways Rain episode 5. Today, it's just JR and I. So, no special guest today, but we do have a lot that we want to talk about. Today's topic is going to be the truth about work-life balance. I quite frankly think it's a myth, JR. I don't know about you, but it's something that is really not a thing, in my opinion.
Let's just say that the word balance is relative, that's for sure. This episode isn't about us having it all figured out. We certainly don't, but we can tell you some stories of what we've tried and how we make it work. So with that, here comes the rain. All right, Kris, episode 5. I can't believe we're 5 into this, and glad to have you back. I had to fly solo last week, and I think the audience is ready for another voice, so it's good to have you back here. Just super high level from my perspective, work-life balance. We've been through a lot. My wife and I are raising 2 daughters. Lucy will be 10 and Stella will be 12 coming up here. Balancing business, a business that inherently has a ton of travel, finding time for family, running that same business. And then we had 2020 come by and COVID disrupted everything, and making some hard decisions in our personal lives about, am I going to be the only one that's working? Is my wife going to stop being a teacher? Just a lot to unpack here in this episode this week, but I know you've had your own challenges as well.
Definitely. So this isn't my typical background, as I'm sure everyone who tunes in will know. So I've been dealing with a little bit of sideways rain and work-life balance myself. My condo was recently flooded due to a HVAC system error. So here we are, which is why I was not present on last week's episode. But perfect segue into today's topic of work-life balance. Here we are, we're still grinding out an episode, trying to give back to the community and just let people know, like, we're real entrepreneurs in this, and we deal with a lot of sideways rain, as you can see. But my main thing that I just want to say is always persevere. Perseverance is key, and as long as you don't give up, you'll never lose. And that's what we're doing here. And to the point of JR, it's a lot to balance between your family, your work life, and kind of what is a priority to you as a human being at the end of the day. You can't work all 24 hours of the day. So you got to learn how to prioritize what's important to you while also still being able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So that's what we're here to talk about. And I'm super excited to kind of dive into this because I got a lot of things to share about the nuance and kind of chaos that I've gone through over the years, especially during the COVID years.
100%. And, not only do you have to fill those, 16 hours you're awake a day in a responsible way to take care of yourself and your family and your businesses, but you have to take care of yourself too and make sure you get those 8 hours of sleep. And otherwise you're not going to be valuable to anybody. So that'd be a good topic to cover in a future episode too, is just sort of managing the health side of yourself inside of these businesses. But I think where we want to start, Kris, this week is to talk about a time when maybe you were overloaded. How did you recognize that situation? Did somebody call you out? What did you do to react? And what does that look like now?
Definitely. A time that I was overloaded. I go back to a specific project, actually, when kind of how you and I met, when I was working with MXGBT. At the time, I was a technology analyst, so I had a few accounts that I was essentially a consultant slash admin for these particular accounts. But then I started branching off into other areas of the business that I thought I was interested in, like mobile app and on-site support, right? So with that, I quickly became very, very busy in my schedule, not because it was a lot of work, but I now incorporated travel into my day to day. And I know that if anybody can attest to how much that is a juggle, it's you, JR, because you're always on the road, you're always on the plane, traveling from state to state, city to city. So that was very overwhelming for me to begin with because I really didn't have that experience of traveling in a corporate setting staying weeks on end in a city that I've never been at, meeting people that I've never met with before, making sure that I'm able to do my job while getting good sleep, eating good food, things of that nature. So that would be the most, I would say, overload and high capacity, high stress job situation that I've been in, but it really taught me a lot in terms of prioritizing yourself first, in terms of your health, making sure you're getting good amount of sleep, and learning to say no
Mm-hmm.
to certain things that are offered to you during those times, because I think we all have that drive in us that makes us think we can do it all. We never want to say no. We can take on as much as we think we can, but it really taught me that you kind of have to pick and choose your battles, and also make sure you're taking care of yourself first, because if you don't take care of yourself, it's all just going to domino and spiral out of control. But curious to hear a situation similar for you in terms of when's the time that you felt
Yeah.
overloaded and kind of how you manage that, because I know you travel 10 times more than I ever have in my career.
Yeah, I'm fortunate now in the position that I'm in. When I do hit the road, it's usually for 2 or 3 days at a time, and I can bounce in and out during the week when the kids are at school, and I'm really only missing maybe dinner time. And but that wasn't always the case when my kids were little. Stella was born in 2013. I was still a producer, and so I'd have to be on the road for travel day, setup day, rehearsal day, 3 days a show. You're talking 6, 7, 8 days for one event. And that's if you don't have back-to-back events. And that's if you're not traveling internationally. Like, compound that if you're going to Rome or Barcelona. And we were doing a lot of that as well. And, I was fortunate in 2013 when Stella was born. We weren't as busy as we were the couple years following, but we had our two girls 22 months apart, and by 2015 we had two at home, and my wife and I sort of managing two little kids, a toddler and a baby. And then 2016 came, and that was one of the busiest years, if not the busiest years of my career, where we did 30 events in 12 months, and there were only four of us at the company at the time. So,
Wow.
and I think about 8 of those events were international. So we were going back and forth to Rome. We were going, Howard Senior was in Argentina. We were in Tokyo. And so we were moving around a ton. I would say I'd be lucky if I was home 50% of the time that year. And we sort of had we had our moments, as a married couple, where we had to work through some pretty tough stuff where I'm on the other side of the world. And, the little stuff that happens in your life where the furnace goes out and you're not home and you're 2,000 miles away and there's nothing you can do, and it's the middle of the night and my wife's using the fireplace to keep the house warm with two babies at home. That was a turning point for me to just say, hey, one, I need to be home more. We need to figure this thing out. And two, I can't do this forever. I need to be home. Like, my kids are little. They don't know right now. My wife does. But by the time they know, I need to have this figured out so I'm not gone as long. And it took some time to get there, and it took a pandemic to sort of make that really happen and solidify it. But I think 2016 was my overload moment to say, like, I can't have another year like this or I'm going to end up alone.
Most definitely. And then I've always heard my elders tell me behind every good man is a good woman.
Oh, yeah,
And that you're a testament to that.
absolutely.
Without her holding down the fort, it's tough to kind of go out and conquer the world. So huge shout out to the wife if you're listening. But that's a good segue, because you mentioned the pandemic kind of forcing that.
Hmm.
Not to say that it wasn't going to happen, but I'm sure that it sped up the timeline. How can you tell us a little bit kind of how the pandemic affected you, 180, and kind of what you learned in terms of pivoting and dealing with the sideways reign of, oh my gosh, the world is shutting down?
Yeah. I don't want to be too dramatic, but it was a live or die moment for us. Up to that point, we had done virtual stuff, but there wasn't a need for virtual events really in the industry. It was just something you did every once in a while. And we went from a largely in-person event production company to not being able to get on an airplane. So what do you do? And we quickly pivoted to a place where we were able to put on virtual events that were, I want to call, television quality, with lower thirds and multiple people on screen and transitions in and out and opening videos and things like that. And so that was early 2020. We had produced a couple of in-person events, and then all of a sudden we were in lockdown, and I was working on a fold-up Costco table in the guest bedroom at home. And my wife was a teacher at the time, and she was working from home, teaching her class virtually. Lucy was a kindergartner. She had the pleasure of starting kindergarten virtually, which I don't wish on any child. And then Stella was in second grade, and she had to transition into a virtual school. So we converted our playroom at home into a classroom where they sat on their iPads and listened to their teachers and had to manage their time while managing a business. And my wife was teaching at the same time. And we just sort of said, we had lots of talks about it, but said, if we want this 180 thing to work and really pivot, you're going to have to put in more time than you're able to with all of our hands in everything at home. And we made the decision, and Erin made the decision, my wife, that, you know what, I'll take a year off. We'll figure this out. You'll push through with 180. And after that year, we'll just see where it goes. And that was a huge decision for us because it allowed me the opportunity to really put my foot on the gas, go all in on 180 in the virtual environment. And we really actually thrived through that time. But if my wife had continued to teach and the kids continued to be home, that was going to be incredibly difficult. And I'm not even sure we'd be where we are today. So COVID was very disruptive to a lot of people for a lot of things. But, I'm very fortunate to be in a very communicative relationship where we could figure it out and make the best decision for our family.
Most definitely. And my fiance and I kind of went through the same struggles with our relationship and kind of figuring out, how do we pivot? Are we both working? Is one of us working? How are we going to provide for our family? So totally hear you on that. And to your point of it forcing you to kind of learn and deal with those situations that you're not so well versed in,
Yeah.
that's the same thing that my fiance and I went through. At the time, I was working with MXGBT, and I was actually out on travel again. I was working an event in Miami when the first COVID reported illness in Miami County was reported,
Mm.
and the event shut down. Some of the event planners that I was with, they were getting calls telling them that they were being let go.
Mm.
It was a crazy time, and unfortunately for me, I was eventually furloughed just because the travel and events industry, to your point, it took a huge hit. No one wanted to be in person, no one wanted to travel, and that entire industry took a huge hit. So it forced me to kind of learn how to navigate something that I had never thought about, even began to prepare for, and just figuring out, how do you continue to live life and provide for your family when the rug is just like pulled from underneath you. But I think it made us both resilient, and it really allowed us to kind of dig deeper and learn about ourselves as people. And that is kind of how I furthered my career. After I got back on my feet, I landed a role with Johnson & Johnson, supporting their technology platform, and I learned a ton from that role. I think I was there for about 2 to 3 years in a technology analyst role again. And that's kind of how you and I reconnected while I was in that role. And the rest is history.
Mm.
So, as hard as that time was, I'm super thankful for the way that it played out, because it forced me to kind of grow up and learn a lot about how to sustain and just continue to push forward no matter what's going on around you.
Absolutely. And then, when it comes to balance, I think balance was tough in COVID because everybody was working from home. And where did you draw the line between, hey, I'm working right now and this is home time, because home and office became ubiquitous. They were the same thing essentially. And it's really hard to draw that line. And I think one thing we got good at, and well, semi good at, and one thing I still work on, whether I'm working in the office or working at home, is just having that time when the phone goes down, or you need to be in it for your family. So if you get home, we got a little spot where I can put my phone and I can just put it down and be in the moment. And one thing that we are always sure to do, no matter what's going on, is we sit down as a family and have dinner, and chat or not chat, depending on how people feel. So no matter how busy you are, if you're resilient and you got the grit and the work ethic, you'll get it done. but just make sure you take the time for the people that you love, because if you don't pause and take a moment, they'll end up resenting you as well. The work will always be there. And I think I'm going to misquote this, but if you're always working to get better, there's always going to be more work to do. And that's what we're doing, right? So we're always working to get better. There will always be more work to do. Make sure you
Definitely.
pause and take the time for yourself, because if you don't, you're going to make yourself crazy.
Preach.
Yeah.
Preach. Is there a moment, I gotta ask, is there a moment in your life or your career where you kind of had that light bulb go off that says, you know what, I haven't been committing myself to my family as much as my work? And if so, what was that moment?
I can't think of a moment specifically, but I think one thing that really hit home is when my kids started to remember how much I was gone, or how much time
Mm,
I spent at the office, or to say, even if like little thing, like maybe you go in the office early and you leave before they're awake, and you put them to bed the next night and they say, Daddy, am I going to see you tomorrow morning? And man, that's like a dagger to the heart, right? So you're like,
yeah,
okay, I need to prioritize these moments. We only have so many of them together. And, as a father of a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old, I'm looking, and, hopefully my wife, when she watches this, doesn't tear up. Well, I'm like, shit, I got 6 years with Stella in the house before she goes out, and I only got 8 with Lucy. We gotta make these count. And so that was kind of the moment when they got big enough, 4, 5, 6 years old, to make the connection and say like, oh, you're going to be gone that long, or you were just gone, or when they're little, they don't remember that stuff. So there was no like specific
definitely.
moment, but it was little moments like that where you're just like, yeah, I need to be here.
Definitely. And I can definitely attest to that because in my relationship with my fiance, I've been able to kind of pinpoint sometimes where it's just like you think you're there and you're in the moment, but you can clearly tell you're still thinking about business things, you're still answering emails, your phone lights up, you're checking it. And to your point, that stuff weighs.
Mm,
It slowly builds up, and as it should,
yeah.
it's kind of like you only get so many hours of the day and no one is getting this time back.
Yep.
Like your time is the most valuable thing in life. So it's definitely taught me a lot, and it's also taught me to pour into the people that are your support system and that do love you, because without them you wouldn't be able to accomplish what you've accomplished.
a hundred
So
percent. Yeah, one of the ways that I've driven efficiency for myself and been able to create work life balance is, and again, this wasn't my idea, but something that I had read. It was just, the things that take up your time today, automate them so that in 3 months they don't take up your time, and work towards that, because something else will fill your time in the next 3 months. So, whether it's uploading your receipts for expense reports, or answering emails in a certain way or time, or having 8 internal meetings a week, how can I take those things that are using the most of my times and maybe aren't that efficient, and automate them so that in 3 months I'm more efficient, and just keep pushing at that stuff, because that'll make you more efficient over time. It'll make you a better uh, worker over time, and be able to do more with less time, or more inside of the 8 hours that you want to work, or 10 hours that you want to work a day, than you ever thought was possible. And I think one of the downfalls, at least when I was young and with younger people, is they see the challenge of the automation and all the time they're going to have to put in to make that work as a hurdle.
yeah,
And instead, they don't see the light at the end of it. If I spend 10 hours now, that's going to save me 100 hours in the next 3 months. They don't see that next part. And that's the connection you have to make, to say like, hey, yeah, it's going to be a lot more work right now, but it's going to feel so good once I get that figured out.
definitely. And that brings up a good point because I don't know about you, but I'm the type of person where if something needs to be done, I'd much rather do it myself than to rely on an automated system or someone else to do it, because I know that I'm going to do it the way that I
Yeah.
expect it to be done, right? So, with that being said, I don't know if you're the same way, but being a CEO of a company and having employees that report to you and roll up to you, how do you handle delegating certain tasks to save you time and to give you that time that you can then reallocate to maybe spend more time with your family? What's that like?
Oh man, I think this is a lesson I learned the hard way a lot of times. Oh man, I tell my leadership team and my coaching team this all the time too. It's instinctual. Like if you know how to do it, you're gonna want to do it. Like, hey JR, why are you telling me to have them do this? I could do it in 5 minutes. It's gonna take them an hour. And I have to say, like, yeah, it's gonna take you 5 minutes, but now you have to do that every time they need that done. And so if you do that 50 times a year, now that hour that you would have spent teaching them that, you've wasted way more time doing it yourself. So it isn't about that moment that's going to take a lot longer than it needs to. It's about the investment in the education of that person so that the next time you don't have to. So even though it's going to be hard to teach somebody a high skill, do it and delegate it and let them make mistakes. Let them make mistakes internally that the client doesn't see that we can correct. And then the next time they'll be able to do it themselves. And that's what you have to do. You have to be willing, one, to trust people to do the things you hired them to do. And two, you have to be willing to let them make mistakes to a certain extent, as long as it doesn't affect how you deliver for your customers.
That's real.
Yeah.
That's real. That'd be tough for me, I feel like, because I'm that person that like loves to have eyes and hands on everything, and letting go and trusting is tough, but I do see how it could be a hindrance to your growth and the overall company's growth.
Yeah,
So
because listen, if you're gonna do everything, like, hey, 180, we'll have 18 employees on March 3rd. If I still had to micromanage and look at everything and do some things myself, like, why are we 18 people?
yeah,
Everybody has their own skills. We brought them here for a reason. As a leader, you have to step back and let them do their jobs. Um, Nobody wants to work in an environment where they're constantly hovering either. So empower them. Tell them, I want you to make a mistake. Say, I'm going to give you this task I know you can't do. Tell me what the holes in it are. Let me learn from you. Um,
yeah,
that I learned the hard way for quite a few years. And
yeah.
once I figured that out, to say like, hey, it's going to hurt today, but next week and going forward, it's going to be amazing. That was a huge turning point for me.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah,
You live and you learn,
for sure.
and continue to grow. No, that's awesome. So I want to pitch something to you live and on the spot.
Oh, another
I
business.
have I have a series of I have a series of random questions that are just like on the tip of my tongue,
Let's do it.
that I think the audience would love to kind of hear your response to. So I'm just gonna throw out a question. You can give it thought. You can just give me a quick answer, and then we can reverse, and you can do the same for
All right,
me.
but first, like, we didn't rehearse this, people, so you don't know what. I don't even know what Chris is gonna ask. I don't know what I'm gonna say. So yeah, this will be a fun one.
Oh, I'm gonna make you think. All right. So number one, give me an airport traveling tip that you've learned or developed over all of your miles of traveling.
Um, Make a plan for airport. Well, here's a general traveling tip, especially if you want to stay healthy. Make a plan for an Instacart delivery or a grocery store pickup before you leave. I've never put on more weight than when I've traveled a lot. Never been more out of shape than when I've traveled a lot. I've ate so many Marriott burgers I could puke. Um, Make a plan. Get some hard boiled eggs in your hand. Get some granola bars. Get some protein shakes in your hotel room, and you'll be a much happier person. You would be surprised, well, especially as I get older, how much your diet dictates your attitude. And if you're eating, a breakfast burrito and a cheeseburger every day, like, you're gonna feel like garbage by the end of the week. So take the time to take care of your health, and it'll pay dividends. Also, drink, like, get the best, your favorite water bottle. I'm not going to endorse any water bottle in the world, but if you don't have a water bottle in your backpack to travel, do you planes are so dehydrating. Like, drink water,
For
people.
sure.
Like, if you're the type of person that gets on a plane and you never have to go to the bathroom, I guarantee you you're getting to the other end dehydrated. Drink the
For
water,
sure.
make that person next to you stand up and go to the bathroom.
I can attest to the dehydration, man. That especially if you're on like a 5 hour plus flight, it's rough.
This
But
isn't a tip either, but this is a shout out. Minneapolis, best airport in the nation.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, why is that? Is it like
It's
modern and new? They have a lot of good
modern,
food
new. You
options.
shop the best food. You can get great ramen, great sushi, great cheeseburger, great egg sandwich. There's a Mexican restaurant. There's everything there. It's the most amazing airport, and I'm a little biased. I'm sitting here in Minneapolis, so I think the runner up for me would be Atlanta. I really like. It's just really big.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's huge.
yeah.
It's huge. Well, I'm gonna take your word on that because I'm sure you've spent more time in that airport than probably your own home
If
at some point.
if anybody flies
Um,
Delta, I'm sure you've been through Minneapolis.
for sure, for sure. All right, I got two more questions for you. When you make it to your flight, are you listening to music? Are you reading? Are you working? What's your kind of routine once you make it to your seat
On the plane.
on the plane?
Oh, I'm a little superstitious, so I'm going to give away some weird stuff here. Um, I pretty much do the same routine every time. I have my iPad with me, I have my AirPods and my phone, and I'll sit down in my seat. And from when I sit down to when they close the boarding door, I pretty much just dink around on LinkedIn or Twitter, or check the social media. But I always send a text to my wife that says on the plane period, and then it's the plane emoji every single time. And it's just like a little tradition we have. And she says safe travels. She says something different every time, but I send that same text every time. And then when I land, I always say on the ground period every time, every flight. So that's sort of this
Like
weird thing that I
clockwork.
do. I'll always load up a couple movies on my iPad before I get on the plane because I don't want to deal with their system. Make sure I got something on there that I want to watch. And depending on the trip, I'll either take that time as sort of like a mental health break to watch a movie, just chill out, relax before you hit the ground and do an event. Or if I need to, you can get into some work stuff. I, when I was a producer, I worked the whole flight. And now I see the value in just sort of taking a step back and not doing that. And I like to pretend like, hey, this plane doesn't have Wi-Fi. There's nothing else you can do. Just sit there and watch a movie. So, yeah, I usually like to kick back and do that. Probably about 70% of the time. If I'm into a good book, I'll bring that. But that's pretty rare. I don't like to read on the airplane because I'll just go to sleep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
What about you?
My routine, I sleep. I sleep every
Man, I can't
opportunity I
sleep on a
get
plane.
on a plane. I if I have a window seat, I'm out of there. If I'm in the aisle, I don't sleep. I'll listen to music. Mainly the weekend, very soothing.
Yeah.
It puts me in that kind of like drowsy mood to just get through it. But yeah, I'm a big sleeper on flights.
Man, I'm jealous. I wish I could sleep.
Yeah, my fiance tells me the same thing. It's like almost impossible for her to sleep, but yeah, I'll put a hood on, and if I have some sunglasses, I'll put some sunglasses on, and I'm out.
I've been
But
fortunate. Like I've been on a plane where the clients put us in business to Rome or to Amsterdam, and it's like an 8-hour flight, and you're in the pod and you can lay all the way flat, and I cannot sleep. And that's a flight you have to sleep on, otherwise you're gonna be up for
yeah,
like 2 days.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
The longest flight I've ever been on, I want to say it was like 16 hours. I flew to Dubai.
Wow.
I probably slept 8.
Crazy. Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be able to do it again now. I was a lot younger then, but yeah, sleeping is my go-to on flights. But last question for you, and this is going to be a fun one. What's the one city or state where you have a client event and every year, no matter what, you dread going to that state or city again?
Oh man, and I'm flying there this Sunday, and it's not because I don't like the city; it's because I don't like the flight. Orlando. Uh,
Ooh,
if
really?
if
Why?
if you're on a mid morning or early morning flight to Orlando, half of that plane, and I have kids, half of that plane will be kids and babies, right?
Okay, that's
So
fair.
that's my least favorite trip. And then when you get there, everybody's in Disney ears and having a good time, and you're there working. So that's one of my least favorites. I like just about everywhere we go, though. I just there's a different flavor of every town. We usually try to find a great restaurant locally. Talk to the local, like if you get an Uber, ask that person where they go to dinner. That's what you want to find out. And we got a few foodies on staff that just like to find the good spots. So just about
That's awesome.
anywhere we go, we'll find something good. Kansas City barbecue, Dallas, some great food, San Diego, some seafood. Man, yeah, it's
For sure.
yeah. I like traveling. It's fun.
That's awesome. Well, that's it for my my quick round questions.
Man, I wish I had some prepared.
Got to keep it spicy around here, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, to circle back to work life, yeah, I mean, that's a tough thing, and I think one of the other misconceptions is you have to grind all the time to be in business, and having multiple businesses means you don't have any time at all. But I think it's just all about what you prioritize. Like Kris and I started WIFT in 2023. We're working other jobs, running other companies, doing other things, and like I said, as long as you prioritize the right things and take your time for the right things, then the rest is going to happen. The work will always be there. Well, we grind hard when we're
Definitely.
working. Like, just make sure you do that.
Definitely. Yeah. And my number one takeaway from today is you have to learn how to grow and delegate and let go because you cannot do everything yourself. You have to lean into your team, your support system, those around you to be able to continue to reach new heights and never be too big to feel like you're the only one that can do it or
Yeah,
achieve that goal that you're trying to achieve.
for sure.
And I think that if you apply that and continue to stay positive and pour into the people around you, the sky's the limit.
All right, I do have one question to close, Kris, and if it is, if you could go back to when you started your first job, what would you tell younger Kris? You're still young. What would you tell younger Kris about work life balance, and what would you have him prioritize?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would tell him prioritize your opportunities and learn from them, regardless of compensation or if you think it's the right fit for you. Always show interest and intrigue in opportunities that present themselves to you. My first job, I was a grocery bagger at Giant,
Cool.
and
I
I
didn't know
hated
that.
it. I hated it. And I don't know why I hated it. Maybe I didn't think it was cool or whatnot, but it taught me a lot in that small moment. And what I learned from it was I didn't want to do it at the time, but it taught me valuable lessons. It taught me how to interact with all different backgrounds of people. And I didn't realize that that's what I was getting from that job. I was
Yeah.
too small minded. And every opportunity that I put myself in after that, I was a concession stand person at the movies at one point. Same thing. I learned how to deal with a lot of chaos, a lot of different background people, kids, older folks, just different backgrounds of people. And through all of those opportunities that I put myself in, I learned now that I'm older, it teaches you a lot of things that you may not necessarily realize in the moment,
Mhm.
but it's shaping you to be a better person and to prepare you for things that you don't even know that are coming your way.
Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of block those experiences sometimes if they feel like maybe they're too good or it doesn't pay enough or I can't commit that kind of time to that type of job. So I've always prided myself on taking advantage of opportunities that present themselves. And I've learned from my younger days that no matter how you feel about it in the moment, buckle up and kind of get through it because it'll be good for you in the long run. And I've kind of applied that into my adult life in terms of things that come my way, like WIFT.
Mhm.
I never dreamed of starting my own company alongside you, especially in such an industry where I have some experience, but I have nowhere near the experience that you have running your own production company for almost 20 years. But taking that leap of faith and confiding and learning from you and seeing how things are ran from a business standpoint and kind of meeting different clientele has really propelled me in my career and also just in my experiences. And I think I continue to pave the way forward and learn from like-minded people like yourself.
Mm.
And I think it's paid huge dividends. So that's what I would tell my younger self, is to just stay the course and don't get caught up in the now, because you're learning a lot more valuable things than you probably realize in the moment.
Yeah, I learned that about you about the grocery store. My first job was in a grocery store too. I started pushing carts in the parking lot, but I eventually was a cashier. And you're right, you learn so much about people. And I just remember at one point I could figure out what kind of mood that person was in based on the body language of how they put their cans on the conveyor belt. So
Yep,
you learn to read people and situations and how to approach them. And man, yeah, I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. Just that customer
for
service
sure.
stuff just goes a long way. And
For sure.
I think if I was going to go back um, 20 years to when I started at 180, I'd encourage myself to do a better job of surrounding myself with the best people. And when you see somebody really good at their job, go out of your way to tell them, and then go out of your way to spend time with that person to learn from them. And I'm not even talking like Gary V celebrity on Instagram type of person. Like, I've run into people in my career that are just amazing technicians, amazing project managers, amazing meeting planners, where I wish I would have just taken that moment to say, like, man, you did awesome on this show. Can we go to dinner? Like, I want to learn from you. So anybody younger listening to that, it's not weird to ask that question. In fact, if anybody asked me that, I'd be flattered, and I would probably pay for the dinner just for you asking me that. Um, so go out of your way. If you see somebody good at their job, tell them and say, "Hey, I want to learn from you. Can we just grab a bite to eat, or do you have an hour so I can just chat with you?" And I think you go a long way for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's awesome. Yeah, it's crazy to learn on this podcast episode that we both were grocery store workers. That's
Mine,
crazy.
yeah, mine's called Rainbow Foods. They're out of business now, but yeah, we used to. Just a funny thing. We used to see who could push the most cart. This was before they had like the automatic cart pushers that they have now.
Yeah,
We'd
you had to
stack up like
stack those things.
50, 60 carts and see if you could push it all the way in. And people used to get so angry because you'd have to push it across where the cars come into the parking lot and they'd be all backed up. You have 50 carts out there.
And you got to be careful, because if you push them too hard and they start going the wrong way, it's
Yeah.
not like you can just stop it. Like
Yep.
those carts are a mess.
Cool.
But no, that's awesome. So that's work-life balance. What do we have on tap for our upcoming episodes? Do we have any guests that we're working on?
Next week's going to be a little tough with both of us. I think gotten some stuff going on. I'm traveling. We'll figure out the next week or so. We have a corporate meeting planner coming up in a couple of weeks. I
Okay.
connected with some folks on LinkedIn as well, some people in the planning industry, both in the US and in Europe. So we'll get some European perspective in the next few weeks. But I'd love for the listeners this week to think about one thing in your personal life that's been neglected because of the work you're doing right now. And I'd love for you to just figure out what's one action you're going to do in the next week to fix it. Let's bring some value here, and we'd love to hear in the comments about what you changed and how it worked, because we could probably use it ourselves.
Definitely. Make sure you all like, subscribe, comment, and continue to share the Sideways Rain podcast. We want to keep talking about topics that we want to share with you guys, and we want to talk about topics that you guys want to hear, and we just want to continue to pave the way forward.
All right, Chris, thanks for doing this. Even though your life has been disruptive, you're not in your office anymore because it's been flooded. It's been fun, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
Sounds good. Sideways Rain.